With 3 simple words, Chainsaw Man was forever altered. Makima is listening. The Gun Devil mission sets into play the downhill motion of this roller coaster that we're inseparably bound upon, all facilitated by none other than Makima. With the same anxiety, trepidation, and primordial fear I feel upon looking down on something while so high up, I had no choice but to consume this arc within a freefall. After concluding the previous arc, I was hoping for light at the end of the tunnel, but as anticipated, there is no light in a world of devils. Pain, loss, and utter helplessness, this arc had no aspect of joy or good for our cast of characters, but goddamn, I couldn't take my eyes off the pages. Subsequently, this arc solidified itself to me as a 10 out of 10 due to the sheer veracity in which I read it, and my god, I can't wait to talk about it. This is Chainsaw Man, and if you're new to this series, I cover the story from a completely blind perspective of never having read the manga, and spoiler alert, I fucking love it. Thus begins the Gun Devil arc. As we're brought back to the story, it was clear that I wasn't the only one scarred by the past arc. We see Power scarred by the recent happenings and even being haunted in her sleep by the Darkness Devil. Along with Power's emotional damage, Aki is still missing an arm, and I'm so glad there wasn't an unexplained contrived method in which somehow everything was okay for those who were in hell, because in fact, it isn't. Aki had already been on a short timeline to live, and now with the body missing a limb, I felt a sense of unease building up in my stomach and traveling to my chest upon these death flags I began to see scattered across the first chapter of this arc. Everyone suffered. Angel was unable to reattach his limbs, Violence and Shark are both dead, Kobeni turned in her resignation. The story just felt different. Throughout Chainsaw Man, I've always felt there were sprinkles of joy and humor mixed in with the suffering and gore, but those elements I've grown to love seemed to dissipate ever so fast, and now we were left with the brutal world Fujimoto created. Denji takes on a new role and acts as a proper big brother to Power, and for once, he's taking care of someone other than himself. This propels Denji's maturity as we get to see him grow up before our eyes due to the circumstances forced upon him. Witnessing this new aspect of Denji was refreshing, but it affirmed that big change was coming for our horn dog protagonist. There's a flashback to Makima requesting Denji to come with her on vacation, and he denies this offer because he wants to look after Power and Aki. I was so proud of Denji in this moment, and it truly shows how far he's come. In a poignant conversation with Power apologizing for being the reason Denji didn't go on his trip, Power offers Denji to drink his blood as reparations, which is an interesting concept because Denji doesn't really enjoy drinking blood. In fact, he only does it narratively to regenerate, so I was curious on why he'd go through with drinking her blood. As I reread through the pages, I came to the conclusion that the drinking of blood was used as a way to establish the dynamic of Power and Denji. The same way in which sharing a cup of sake symbolizes brotherhood or friendship, this sharing of blood establishes their bond. The panels that followed look sensual in nature, but they weren't. In fact, Denji even says that it doesn't feel sexual at all, and that despite how it looks, these aren't panels with any naughty or sexual intention. It serves to affirm that Power is like family to Denji, and she isn't a love interest. This plot point is a great establishment of Denji's change. Previously, he wanted to pounce on every woman he'd meet, but he's grown to distinguish his feelings. I felt like a proud parent watching Denji grow up, and it's something that's beautiful to see. Denji once more this arc is presented with the door that reappears in his dreams like a sick shadow, but rather than questioning what's behind it, the philosophy of Kwangsi reigns supreme once more. That sometimes it's better off not knowing the truth, that ignorance is truly bliss, that whatever is behind this door, it's better off staying closed. Unfortunately for us, this arc doesn't enable us to continue our blissful ignorance as much as we wish it would. Denji, Aki, and Power proceed to go visit Aki's hometown to visit the gravesite of his family, and throughout their travels we see some brief panels of the various modes of transportation that Power and Denji are both experiencing for the first time. Once more, it was like Aki was taking his students on a field trip, and in these brief moments, it was almost as if everything was the same as before. While they visited the gravesite, I was reminded of Aki's statement while they were cast into hell, the statement of not again. That he never wanted to experience losing those close to him ever again. Thankfully, despite being in hell, he didn't. These two he loves, these two which are his family, he didn't lose them. Aki's character has always spoke to me. Him being haunted by loss and constantly standing in his conviction that he'll do anything to seek his revenge and even give up his own life to protect those he cherishes. He's a tragically written character, and seeing him stand before the graveside of his loved ones, I got emotional reading it. Although my mother doesn't have a burial site since she was cremated, there isn't a time that even throughout every smile, I'll still find myself feeling that loss and longing for the person I can no longer see in this lifetime. Although I'm not someone with remotely a similar demeanor or disposition as Aki, in general, I'm actually a really happy and overly optimistic person, but I can't help but feel drawn towards that commonality of loss. With their return to Tokyo, Aki meets with Kishibe and asks if Division 4 can withdraw from the Gun Devil mission, a request that I didn't even believe upon reading it. His motivation of revenge that he's established since he was first introduced is something I never thought he'd stray away from. It has always been about the Gun Devil, no matter the cost. But now, cold feet. With this request, he'd never be able to take down the entity that brought ruination upon his life, and he would further live in the dark in regards to the success or the failure of the mission. However, Aki doesn't care because he's found something far more important than revenge. He's found family, love, those in which he seeks to protect. He could never allow Division 4 to assist in taking down the Gun Devil because Denji and Power's lives mean far too much to risk them in his own plot of revenge. Revenge is a lonely road to self-destruction, and Aki had no hesitation going along this path for years, but this dilapidated duo of Denji and Power showed him exactly what's worth living for, despite the headache. This culmination of Aki's development was profound, but I found myself unnerved rather than excited at his development. Once more, the death flags reared their ugly head. A phone call, a summon from Makima. Makima informs him that Denji and Power won't be left out of the operation, which forces Aki to go back into the fold to protect them. God only knows what Makima is cooking, but please God, do not let her cook. She tells the trio that the Gun Devil has already been defeated and confined, that the remnants of the Gun Devil are possessed by various governments around the world. Guns have been circulating under the guise of being distributed by the Gun Devil when they were truly facilitated by the governments, thereby increasing the fear the Gun Devil elicits, which grows the power of the Gun Devil that the governments possess. All this to say, these governments are bad. This operation is not one to take down the Gun Devil. Instead, it is one of war, of conquest, of control. Aki sees briefly into the future and summons the future devil, who tells him of a future that is unavoidable, that Power and him will both die by the hands of Denji, and after that, the most feared devil shall appear. I know the future devil wasn't lying, but I speculated on how this reality could come to pass. Denji would never voluntarily take the lives of his family. The only way he could ever do so if it was forced upon him, if there was truly no other choice. For Denji, almost his entire life, he's never been able to make his own choices. He's lived as a dog, but I hope for his sake that he'll be given a choice. Given the future devil's statement that the most feared devil shall appear, I imagine with the loss of Denji's family that the latent power of the true nature of the Chainsaw Man will arise. Although just a speculation, there's been so much setup regarding Denji potentially being this entity that is the devil that devils fear most, and I'm excited to see if it comes to fruition. With this news, Aki meets with Angel to discuss what will happen after his death. He gives security to the future of Angel's life with a letter of recommendation, and in Aki fashion, he tries to leave as a martyr with little sentimentality in his goodbye. However, Angel has a soft spot for Aki. Aki was the one to instill humanity within Angel and show him that he could care for humans within Aki's lack of hesitation that there was life aside for Angel within the Bomb Girl arc. And with his love of Aki, he devises a plan to go to Makima and find a way to avoid his death. As I write this script, I wince at this plan, and I'm sure you do as well. Both Angel and Aki arrive to the beach to meet Makima just one day before the operation. She's at the beach, which is a little bit eerie as Angel suggests. As they walk to the beach, they eventually find Makima wearing a beautiful black dress and looking angelic. Ironic, I know. Makima says she's been waiting, and she doesn't say for who, but it's clear it wasn't for them. Aki tells her that his death awaits, and instead of pleading for his own life, he rather asks for her to ensure that Denji and Power survive and live happily. This meeting with Makima was never about Aki finding a way to survive. He knew long before the future devil that his time was near. This instead was always about his family, both his real and his makeshift one. He's carried the guilt of responsibility for his family's death all this time, and he wants the strength to change this millstone of fate, to never allow it to happen again. He says he'll make a contract with any devil so long as she helps, and Makima, with her eyes that have never expressed any emotion that isn't clouded, she smiles and tells him to make a contract with her, to give all of him. In return, she'll give him strength. When I read this, I felt so much anxiety as I finally began to understand who Makima is. She isn't human, she's a devil. All these countless moments of foreshadowing, the eeriness of Makima, the subtleties of her behaviors, it all came to fruition in a moment of rapid realization, a moment of brilliance. Upon hearing this from Makima, Angel began to remember everything. His previous life, those he loved, his friends, the devil standing before him. Makima long ago had ordered him to show her his power and subsequently force him to annihilate the village he had grown to call home. The very first thing he ever loved. Just like she exhibited with the Santa Claus doll, Makima isn't just persuasive, she controls. When she mentioned to Aki, it wasn't a request, but an order, and he states that he'll make the contract. With Angel's radical realization, he does everything in his limited power to stop Makima, but to no avail, and he's commanded to give Makima all of his power as she tells both of them this is the only choice she can make. We're then taken to the White House as the president gives up 1 year of all the lifespans of the American people in order to make a contract with the Gun Devil in order to kill Makima, the Control Devil. I damn near jumped out of my chair at this panel because we finally hear the true identity of Makima, and holy f***. Throughout my series of blind reviews, I've shot out so many theories, and often they're only slightly correct, but my theory on Makima representing the 4 horsemen was almost the most correct and spot-on theory I've ever had. I had thought she would embody all 4 of the horsemen due to the representation she's elicited so far within the story, but it seems she rather represents the horsemen of conquest, which is synonymous with control. This is nonetheless a win in my book, and if she is merely one of the 4 horsemen, then perhaps 3 more entities just like Makima exist throughout the world of Chainsaw Man. I know the horseman concept hasn't been confirmed as an actual entity, but given we have seen Makima represent all 4 of these elements and now it being revealed that she is the control/conquest devil, I'm sticking to it. Too much lines up for this theory to be wrong. Makima, a global threat, now invites the gun devil to come in a chilling panel. With her aesthetic looking divine and delicate, it's a stark contrast to the very monster she is. I'm a great fan within storytelling where the heroes look evil and the villains look godly. The dichotomy presented never ceases to get me excited. What follows is a sequence of chapters that are the embodiment of horror and destruction. The gun devil fires through churches, cities, and small towns, killing innumerable innocents in the wake of hellfire the gun devil brings, all towards Makima. Fujimoto does a phenomenal job with listing the names of the victims along with the panels of the destruction to really drive home the brutality and loss of life the gun devil creates. With the gun devil finally arriving to Makima, Makima experiences her 29th death and has some of her brain matter come out of her head to form a grotesque halo. Where I wish her halo was anything but this, but if I squint my eyes I can headcanon that this halo isn't just flesh from her brain. In order to fight against the gun devil, she uses her ability in which she uses the abilities and lives of anyone she has control over, and their powers then open from the sky as if it was from heaven itself, which perfectly fits the angel aura of Makima, and these powers seemingly defeat the gun devil. My only qualm with this fight is that the deaths of all these characters are off-screened, but I can see the benefit of this choice of writing. With these deaths off-screened, we're left to imagine the worst possible endings for some of our beloved characters like Angel, and subsequently the hatred and fear of Makima we all possess grows even further to set her up as the perfect final villain for our story. As Denji relaxes at the apartment, he hears a knock, and this door we've been warned about for so long is soon to be opened. With their house phone ringing, Denji answers to find Makima on the other line telling him that they failed to defeat the gun devil, that it took over a corpse, and that corpse is now ringing their doorbell. My heart stopped as I realized the exact corpse that was taken over. God, I have no idea why Fujimoto has to make this so gut-wrenchingly painful. This spits in the face of Aki as he is taken over by the very devil that haunted his life since he was a child. With every panel that follows, there's a constant ding-dong and it makes it feel like we're watching a horror slasher. As Denji opens the door hoping it's just a prank, we find Aki who immediately blasts Denji, and soon after my favorite panel of this arc takes place. Despite Denji having his guts strewn about, the moment that Aki comes for power, Denji fully transforms, and with his arms around Power and Miaoi, he protects them from Aki. This fight is the most tragic one I think we could ever experience within this story. In order to protect his sister within Power, Denji must face his brother Aki in a fight that only ends with one of them standing. Our favorite trio will soon be cut down to just 2, and it's horrifying that Makima sets into motion what will likely be Denji's subsequent mental downfall. She gave him a warm bed, food, and family, a life he could have never imagined, and now she's taking each piece out and breaking him. I'm unsure what her end motive is, but it's clear this psychological warfare is setting up the climax of the final arc. Throughout Aki and Denji's fight, Aki in his own mind is himself as a child having a snowball fight with Denji, and I felt this scene was so parallel to Obito vs Kakashi, where the fight will switch between past and present. And although the circumstances were very different, the paneling felt extremely similar. This type of juxtaposition is one of the best ways to elicit emotional moments within fights for me, and it's extremely well done within this battle. With every snowball thrown, it would cut to reality in which rather than a snowball hitting, it'd be the impact of a blast from the gun. The level of anxiety I had throughout this fight is the highest I've had within reading Chainsaw Man. I've grown so attached to Aki and the dynamic of this family they've built, so each panel subsequently felt so painful. With the battle rampaging, citizens are caught in the wake and the very issue existing from the prior arc within the public's knowledge of the Chainsaw Man hidens. There is no more hiding Denji from this world, and given Makima last arc stated she had tried to suppress the public's knowledge of Denji, I quickly surmised that this was just a blatant lie and her true intention is still clouded. As Denji fights with all his strength to protect all the innocent bystanders and still simultaneously get through to Aki, the surrounding citizens begin to view him as their hero, even going so far as to give them his blood to revive again and again. It's a chilling concept. These citizens are voluntarily reviving a devil because they know he is their only hope. The narrative of devils throughout the public's perception has always been that of evil and horrifying, yet Denji seems to break that trope and show the citizens that there can exist a devil fighting for good. With a chance of those asking to be saved, we are taken back to the snowball fight, and the way Fujimoto constructs the conclusion of this fight is nothing short of masterful. The snowball fight, the very fight he was never able to have with his brother so long ago, it's symbolic that now he is able to finish this game with Denji. Not as friends, but as true brothers. Rather than witnessing Denji and Aki fight in the most gruesome way possible, we instead view Denji's lamentation within the snowball fight. With every snowball that hits Aki, we know that Denji is killing Aki in the real world, and Aki, not cognizant of this, he questions why Denji is crying for the first time before him. Denji, an individual characterized by a life of pain and suffering, he at one point was accustomed to the pain, but now he knew love. he knew family. This very concept he longed for his entire life, he is forced to kill his best friend in order to set him free from the monster he became. With Aki's final moments, the snowball fight switches from Denji and he gets to see his brother once again and finally play that game of catch they were meant to play before the gun devil stripped their lives away. Despite it being Aki's death, he's happy in his final moments. He's finally with his family once again, and that makes his death for me a little bit less painful. With Denji in remorse before the body of his best friend, the future devil observes the unavoidable future he informed Denji of, and the chapter closes with a tragic panel of Aki and his brother playing catch. When the future devil first told Aki he'd die in the worst way possible, I felt the statement was mysterious in nature because that can mean a gamut of things. However, as Occam's razor suggests, the simplest explanation is often the correct one. Aki's death was truly the worst way possible. He was forced to become the very entity he vowed his life to enact revenge upon, and he was killed by his brother Denji. Just as Aki was learning to rid himself of the guilt of his family's passing, and he was learning that there is more to life than revenge, that he could live for his family, those in which he loves, it was stripped away in the blink of an eye, all within these chapters. These 10 chapters were an emotional downhill slope that left me in a state of unease after concluding the arc. The revelation of Makima being the control devil was everything I'd hoped for as a reader longing for a mastermind of an antagonist. Similarly to my favorite villain of all time within Aizen, Makima dictates the narrative through her actions, and it's apparent that there are no coincidences. Everything was according to her plan, as is fitting with the control devil. Given the future devil's prediction about Power's eventual fate, I have immense trepidation as I write this script about what will happen to our best girl. Surely Denji can't suffer more. With one arc left, the story is setting into motion the eventual clash of Denji and Makima, as Denji will soon learn exactly why ignorance has always been bliss. With Denji's mental state likely to be in shambles, I pray to whatever god above there is that he'll be able to keep it together to give Makima all she has coming to her. The Gun Devil arc is nothing short of abuse from Fujimoto, and to progress the story down such a sickening path, leading me to believe there will be no more moments to breathe within the final arc. The tragedy of Aki is one I won't be able to forget, and with his passing, I truly do feel none of our characters are safe. What will happen next? Will Power meet the same fate as Aki? Will Makima somehow be defeated? What's the true history of the Chainsaw Devil? Will Denji finally have the time to get laid before the story ends? I guess we'll find out next time. If you stuck around this long, please do consider dropping a subscription to see more videos just like this. This has been hiXtrah, and as always, be greedier, and I will catch you all next time.